Hello everyone, my name is Jim Henry. I'm an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Lethbridge, and the title of my presentation is Explorations in Creativity, the Music Model Self-Assessment Scale. And as I deliver this YouTube version of my presentation, I'm trying to imagine that I'm in Spain. When I first submitted my proposal, I was going by the more formal title of the Development and Preliminary Validation of the Music Model Self-Assessment Scale. This is that presentation. Let me begin with a real brief overview of what I'm going to cover in my presentation. I'm going to look first at the importance of creativity in all domains. That's an important area to cover. Also, a look at the views of creativity enhancement, a brief outline of my method, participants, criteria for inclusion, how I used the experts. I'll also provide a rationale for the music model that I use: motivation, uncommon commitment, skill, imagination, and courage music model. I'll outline my item development and the procedure for the study, and then I'll touch on, of course, my results, discussion, and limitations. First, let me take a look at the importance of creativity across domains. Though traditionally creativity has been associated with the arts, the truth is that creativity is essential in all domains of study. It's essential in science, invention, and technology. It plays a vital role in the process of learning. As Anna Kraft said, it's centrally relevant to education on a global scale. It may even be as important as literacy, as Ken Robinson suggested. In business, creativity is a necessity rather than an option. And the human creative faculty may now be our most valuable economic resource, as Florida pointed out in The Rise of the Creative Class. Creativity contributes to our quality of life and our experience of fulfillment. As Csikszentmihalyi emphasized, when we're involved in creative work, we tend to feel more alive than we do in the rest of our life. Creativity is directly linked to our mental health, and most of the things that are interesting and important are the results of creativity. So creativity is an important thing. It's an important thing to study, and it's essential in the world today. Now, given that creativity is so important, it's encouraging that many theorists promote the idea, promote the notion, adhere to the idea that creativity is not set at birth and can in fact be enhanced. Now, while a clear answer as to how it can be enhanced is not really easy to find in the literature, the truth is that there's been a lot of research done and there are many suggestions. Creativity enhancement did once focus very heavily on divergent thinking, but really over the past 25 years we've seen a move to much more inclusive models. And now when we look at creativity enhancement, the research we see that the research suggests that consideration be given to many variables, including things like motivation, skill and knowledge, work ethic and dedication, and in things like facing challenges and taking risks and persevering in times of hardship and rejection. So let me share a bit about the method that I used in going about this study. First of all the participants identified themselves as painters, singer-songwriters, musicians, poets, sculptors, or writers. This was important from my view because my hope is that the scale will be used as a tool for people who are wanting to do a self-assessment of their own creative ability. And so because of that, it just seemed to make real good sense that the participants were people who had good facility with the creative process, good familiarity with it, and who had demonstrated a degree of success in their own lives, in their own creative lives. All of the participants have a minimum of 5 years experience in their fields. The truth is that that's just the minimum. Most of them had many more years experience. They all had completed at least 2 major works, like books or CDs of their original songs, gallery shows of their completed paintings. And again, this is just the minimum. Most of them had completed far more than the minimum. 101 participants took part, 37 male, 64 female, and quite an array of ages from 26 to 79. So I want to tell you a bit about the music model that I use. The music model draws on what is known as confluence theory, if you are familiar with the body of research in creativity. And it's the notion that creativity occurs at the coming together and interacting, the confluence of many elements. The music model builds on Amabille's three-component model for creativity enhancement. Now, when I first began to study creativity, my very first study, I noticed that there were underlying themes that emerged when I asked people, I asked creative people about the influences that had most significantly had an impact on their creative lives. And a great array of things emerged as being important, but I began to recognize that there were underlying themes. And so when I saw things like passion, life purpose, self-expression, reinforcement, all of these things being emphasized, I realized that they were elements that could be reduced to the sub-theme or the underlying theme of motivation. And I realized that all of the individual influences that I was hearing about and that were being emphasized by these participants, this was in a previous study, could be reduced to one of these five underlying themes: motivation, imagination, courage, skill, and commitment. I took a bit of creative license with commitment and I renamed it uncommon commitment, and that allowed me to create this more memorable acronym: motivation, uncommon commitment, skill, imagination, and courage, the music model. So let me just briefly tell you a bit about each of these underlying themes. So motivation, here I'm primarily looking at intrinsic motivation. When we're intrinsically motivated, we're involved in an activity for its own sake. We enjoy doing it. And the process is itself satisfying and rewarding. Partly why intrinsic motivation is so important is that we're most creative when our reason to create comes from within. And high levels of creativity simply require this kind of motivation. Uncommon commitment refers to hard work and persistence. While you may notice a certain aspect of playfulness in creative people, right alongside that you'll see these characteristics of being dedicated and devoted and disciplined and really being able to put in long hours and be persistent. The third element is skill. Every domain has skills and knowledge to be learned. People are creative within a particular domain. So people are not generally creative, they're creative within a particular domain. And in order to create in any domain, education, music, physics, business, we need the skills and knowledge of that particular domain. The fourth element is imagination. Without imagination, creativity or creative attempts lack an essential component. There's nothing novel or innovative, and some people consider imagination to be the most essential element of the creative process. And the fifth element is courage. Take a look at the lives of creative people and you'll see that they're often taking risks in their work, even sometimes in their choice of career. They often have to persevere in the face of obstacles. And you'll see that when people are coming up with truly imaginative ideas, they're often needing to hold on to their ideas while the crowd is marching in the other direction. So courage is also an important part of the creative process. So that's the music model: motivation, uncommon commitment, skill, imagination, and courage. So let me continue with item development. In the literature on scale development, it's recommended that you generate many more items for any scale or subscale that you intend to use. So I created 50 to 65 items for each element of the music model for a total of about 300 items. It's also recommended that you create items for each aspect of any dimension, any element or factor. So I created items for the aspects of uncommon commitment, for example, that include hard work and persistence, willingness, and the ability to work with discipline, dedicated effort. It's also recommended in the literature that you seek items that are clear, concise, unambiguous, concrete, and that avoid jargon and the use of negatives. And so following these directives, I reduced that original list down to 103. In enhancing content validity, I brought in the use of 7 experts, 6 teachers, and 1 counselor artist. And these are all people who had a professional interest or involvement in creativity. Some of them were conducting their own research. Some of them were involved in creativity enhancement programs in their schools and that sort of thing. And they rated the items high, medium, or low for relevance, effectiveness, and clarity. They also provided comments on the items, and they suggested content areas that I may have omitted. And their feedback resulted in 26 items being removed from that pool, 3 items being added, and 4 items being reworded. And the final scale contained 80 items, 16 for each element of the music model. So let me look at my procedure. The scale was completed online, so the 101 participants completed it online. They had web access and an accompanying password login, so this allowed them to log on, do part of the scale, and then if they wanted to, they could save a draft and come back later and complete it. They responded to a 5-point Likert scale ranging from 1 not at all true to 5 very true. Here are a couple of sample items. So a couple of motivation items. Involvement in my craft adds a great deal of meaning to my life. I have an intense internal drive to take part in my craft. A couple of uncommon commitment sample items. The ability to work very hard when I need to is one of my strengths. When I set a goal, I tend to reach it. So here are the results. I did a general item analysis with SPSS Statistics version 20 to explore internal consistency, and I calculated Cronbach's alpha and reviewed the corrected item total correlations for each of the subscales. And here are the Cronbach's alpha scores. So you see motivation had an alpha of 0.853, all the way up to the highest was skill at 0.942. As well, the corrected item total correlations were in the moderate, and for 2 of the scales, the moderate to high range. Now, what this suggested originally is that no items be deleted. That deleting any items would actually lower alpha and indicate a lower reliability. But as you'll see when I explore this a bit further in the discussion, this actually pointed to something else that was an important finding of the study. So the results suggest that Cronbach's alpha scores indicate an acceptable level of reliability. They are 0.8 or higher. But the truth is that though higher alpha scores tend to indicate high reliability, scores over 0.9 can sometimes suggest that a scale is repetitive and redundant. The high alpha scores for the subscales of skill, 0.942, and courage, 0.936, they really served as flags drawing attention to this possibility. And further review suggested that this is very likely the case, that the scale items overlap and they repeat unnecessarily. So this actually turned out to be quite an important part of the study, that it really did, those high scores really did point to the fact that there's the possibility of redundancy in the items, and this really turned out to be the case. So while the actual raw scores suggest a very strong reliability, the truth is that these at this point need to be interpreted with caution. As well as that, another limitation to the study is that the subscales are based on findings in the existing literature and my interpretations of those findings. The subthemes were not confirmed via more complex approaches such as factor analysis. So though the results in the item analysis really point to having very strong reliability, the truth is that some of the scores were quite high, and this pointed to the potential for redundancy. And this, as I said, turned out to be a very important part of the finding, and really, to me, points the direction for the next level of investigation, the next level of study. And the conclusions for the study are that further research is needed to explore the validity of the scale and to further explore the potential redundancy of the items, but that the overall findings provide a good starting point and suggest direction for future study. So hopefully this provides a good overview of the findings and of this study. Further details are available in the paper, and I go into things in much more detail there. Well, that concludes my presentation, Explorations in Creativity, the Music Model Self-Assessment Scale. I'm Jim Henry, Associate Professor at the University of Lethbridge, Faculty of Education. Thank you very much.